Hey everyone, welcome to the Pound for Pound Leader Podcast with Mike Kai. My name is DJ, part of the podcast team, and I am excited today to bring you a special episode as we do a replay of a powerful interview with Mike Kai and Jedediah Thurner. Jedediah Thurner is the executive director of Missions.me. He is passionate about equipping the church locally, nationally, and even globally to send them out to fulfill God's great commission of discipling the nations. Missions.me sends thousands of people annually to different countries around the world. It is incredible. Well, he was here with us a couple years ago when we had our Kingdom Man Camp, and we actually are having that Man Camp again in a couple of weeks, and he's going to be back again. So we want to do a replay, a flashback of that interview that Pastor Mike had with him. So we want you to tune in as they talk about covenant, they talk about leadership, amongst other topics that you'll want to hear or be, if you heard it before, you want to be reminded of, or maybe this can be a new interview for you. So check it out. Let's lean in together with an interview with Mike Kai and Jedediah Thurner.
And here we are at the beach on the North Shore at Mokuleia. Hey, Jedediah Thurner, good to have you here. How you doing?
It's such an honor to be with you. You got to get here in October. If you don't go, you never know.
If you never know, you never grow.
And who's going to say no to God's promised land?
Exactly. And so it's great to have you. Thank you so much, Jedediah. You're such an incredible preacher of the word, revelation. But I want to go back to ask you a question. It's so good to have you. If you don't know Jedediah Thurner, you should know him. He is one of the co-founders of Missions.me. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
Missions.me, where One Nation, One Day, along with Dominic Rousseau and the entire crew out of Dana Point, California, reaching people and nations for Jesus, one nation at a time every single year. Jedediah, tell us a little bit more about Missions.me, please.
Yeah, it's a great question, and there's so much to say. I think the heart for us right now is really uniting the global church for the salvation and transformation of nations. Mm-hmm. You know, when we look at the Great Commission, which really is the mandate for every believer, right? Somehow we've reduced the Great Commission to a missions verse. Yeah. But it's really the verse that states the mission. And when we look at it, it's not a mobilization mandate, it's really a leadership mandate. You know, he says, go and make disciples of nations, which if you were to disciple anyone, you had to be leading them. So it's not simply about the church just going or the church growing, but it's about the church leading. And One Nation, One Day has just become one of the vehicles that helps unite the body of Christ around a nation to see the salvation and transformation of nations, believing that the gospel deserves the intention of entire nation. And the mandate for the church, the vehicle that's God ordained to produce that transformation and salvation, is to lead everywhere, to lead everyone, to lead in all spheres of influences. And so we have the privilege of standing alongside the local church to help facilitate sustainable transformation.
So what is that nation that you guys are going after this year? Tell us about that.
We're going to be in Peru this June, which is unbelievable. And we've now done 3 One Nation One Days. And the last 3 One Nation One Days, which you can go to onenationoneday.com to find more about it. You know, We've had the privilege of seeing 2.5 million people being reached face to face.
Wow.
We've had 52 full stadium events. We've seen 749,000 plus students reached face to face. Over 44,000 people have received life-saving medical and dental aid. And but we knew that the next One Nation One Day, God actually said, would be the new One Nation One Day.
Okay.
So the new One Nation One Day is Peru. Right now we got 5,000 people from 33 different nations, 5 continents, 150 different churches, leaving behind their logos, their labels, and their egos to unite with one vision and one voice for One Nation One Day. And we also have 5,000 Peruvians joining the team. So a team of 10,000 will be taking over Peru literally in less than 90 days.
Okay, so that's amazing. So I know you as an incredible preacher. I know you as, a missions organization leader, global leader. But tell me about the Jedediah that grew up in these islands over here. Nobody, I don't know if anybody really knows that you grew up in Hawaii. You need to claim Hawaii just a little bit more. Exactly.
Come on.
The life of the land is perpetuated in righteousness under Jesus Christ. That's the state motto of course, they took out Jesus Christ, or it's still there. They just won't mention his name. But Jedediah, you grew up in these islands. Tell us a little bit about how you grew up here, you know, and because I want to go on a journey with everybody about who you are.
Yeah, no, my parents were missionaries, lived in 100 homes before I was 25 years old.
100 homes?
It's not even an exaggeration. I wish it was Preacher's Liberty. I wish I was lying at times. I always say it means I have problems, and my wife's been graciously working on
At
me.
what home did you come along as a missionary? Were you
No, I lived
house
in
number 25?
I lived in 100 homes.
Oh, okay. Because I was going to ask you what house you might have been conceived in.
No, I was born on a waterbed in Washington State, for real. Born at home.
Born at home on a waterbed. Was that a doula thing? Was that
My parents were
a
crazy
groovy,
hippies. There
a
was
70s thing?
there was symbols. There was oil being thrown around.
And were they saved already?
Yeah, they were saved.
Okay.
No, and then they moved to Hawaii. First island was the Big Island, and
Which was the best island?
The best island. No, Maui no Kauai. Maui's the best. There's a lot of faces being made, but we lived on every island but Kauai. Lived in every city in Maui but Hana, and so proud, to be honest. There's aspects of this island, the culture here, especially when it comes to Ohana. When it comes to honor and respect, there's things that I learned here you really can't learn anywhere. It's why I constantly bring my family back every year.
Mm-hmm.
I want them to experience the things that have made this place so beautiful. And in this season, because of this relationship, I've said it to you multiple times, I'm just so honored that I get to serve these islands through you. The apostolic leader you've become to this incredible state, what Inspired Church has become to these islands and really to the globe. And this is what it all started.
Yeah.
That's what it all started.
Okay, so from there, you are under a great ministry all over. That's island-wide, statewide, incredible ministry pastors. From there, God bless you. From there, now what you do is you go to Azusa Pacific University,
right?
Play linebacker there. All-American, no, not even close. But anyway, you tried. You were All-American.
Thanks, man. I was. I actually got academic All-American twice.
Really?
And then I got athletic. But when I got the first academic, my dad goes, "When are you going to get the real one?" He's like,
"That's funny. That's funny."
Yeah, I was. But who cares?
I didn't know. That's awesome. So you knew some of the kids in my youth ministry that ended up going to Azusa Pacific, like gold medal decathlete Brian Clay.
Come on, where's he at?
His name to claim, my name to claim was that I was his youth pastor just for his senior year. You go to Azusa Pacific, God does something. You kind of fell away from the church, right?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that moment or where that period of time so we can get the...
Yeah, I definitely... one thing I've learned for those listening, especially if you're in a faith context, one of the great attacks of the enemy on our children is changing the perception and perspective of what the call to ministry is.
Okay.
So the enemy works so hard to distort and really destroy the perspective of ministry. So half of the things I dealt with was not the reality. It was actually the distortion of reality that the enemy got me to believe in.
About being a missionary kid.
All of it.
PK.
That's why I'm constantly clarifying with my kids the why behind the what. So often you see the what. Your dad leaving, your parents taking trips, the sacrifice to serve people, to love people. But clarifying the why is so significant. Why are we doing this? And so by the time I got to school, I met my wife, and she said, "I'll never marry a pastor, a preacher, a missionary evangelist." And I said, "Sign me up. Let's just be rich and write large tithe checks." And that was kind of the plan. That's what we did. And then a few years into that journey, God showed up with some outrageous encounters and said, "I have a completely different plan for you."
Now, from there, how do you get to... What were you doing in the middle of this? I knew you were in real estate, living in Palm Springs, California, doing absolutely great. Tell me what shifted for you to find yourself later in a place called Detroit, Michigan.
Right. I mean, I feel like for me and my wife, and you've heard me say this before, you got to define your definition of success. It's so clear. Leader, father, parent, follower, whatever it is, we have to define what our definition of success, because that will determine the filter in which you see your life through, what you pursue, your agendas, your motives, your initiatives.
So critical. So good, bro.
And so for us, we defined quickly. It took a while, but what's our definition of success? It's one word for every believer. It's obedience.
Yeah.
When you get to heaven, he's not going to say, "Well done, good and financially blessed servant. Well done, good and faithful servant," or famous servant. He's going to say, "Well done, good and faithful servant." So we just started asking the question, what is God asking of us? We didn't probably want to take that journey, but it was like, if success is obedience, we wanted to be obedient, which means we have to determine what God's asking of us.
Yeah.
And really our journey has been a lot of sustained no's, followed by very short, reluctant yeses to God.
That led you to Detroit?
Yeah, that just led me to surrender.
Okay.
And then surrender equaled moving to Michigan and helping a church. Surrendered equaled selling businesses in the homes to really serve One Nation One Day, to see if it was possible. I mean, it just really said we were going to do whatever it takes to be in a position of obedience. So a lot of people are like, "Oh, look what you've done." And I just go, "No, we're not heroes. We've just been obedient." And it's amazing the potential of obedience can never compare with the potential of an opportunity. So there's a lot of people that are running after opportunities which have potential, but obedience is where the compound blessing of God will find and rest on your life.
That's incredible. So what have you discovered along this journey that you've been all over the world, speaking at different churches and also serving Missions.me? What do you find the common denominator in people who are pursuing something but haven't actually reached their destination at this point before the next plateau and the next peak and valley? What do you find is the common denominator that actually gets people unloosed from mostly everybody gets stuck at some point? I hope that makes sense.
I mean, I would, the obedience would be one. I think it's the three things that, people say, what's some of the three things you live by? Obedience would be one, definition of success. I think there's an element of humility. You know what I mean? So for you to make a change, there has to be humility. For you to want advice, there has to be, hunger is a sign of humility. Hunger says I need. You know what I mean? So I think people move to a place of, I can't do it on my own. So they actually get to a place of brokenness and dependency on Jesus. Humility in the body of Christ is not optional. No matter what level you live on or lead on, humility is not optional. And then honor. I think when you start making decisions out of honor for everyone, those are the things that I think start moving people towards destiny.
Humility, obedience, and honor.
Yeah, humility. If you just filtered everything through that lens, you can't.
Obedience, and honor. One of them, humility, is more. Every single one of it is action.
Right.
It's not. It's an attitude and an action.
Right.
It's interesting.
Right. It's good.
So let's say if someone's where they are, and it's mundane. It's not as big as they thought it would be, but they're still doing it.
Right.
As long as they're obedient to God, as long as they have humility, and as long as they are humble,
walking in honor,
it's going to set up whatever is next.
Absolutely. I feel like it's everyone who's getting unstuck is moving from a no to a yes.
Yeah.
Right? You're moving from a maybe to a yes, a how to a yes, a why to a yes. I think where you're in churches where there's incredible buy-in is when there's more yeses in the room. In fact, my definition of the revival is when there's more yeses than nos in a room. That's revival to me. It's when there's more yeses, more yes to whatever you want, God, however you want it. And I think it's also moving, maybe you would say, what's the big shift? It's moving from building your kingdom to building their kingdom. I know me and you were talking before this podcast, and you say, man, what shifted for you? There was one day in a prayer time, God said, you're building your kingdom. And I was like, there's no way, God. I'm serving in church. I don't want to. I'm tithing. I don't want to. I'm leading a small group. I'm being really honest. I didn't want to. I didn't want to do anything with ministry. And I go, oh, no, I'm not building my kingdom. I'm building your kingdom. And he actually said, no, you're building facets of my kingdom around you as king. So to everyone around you, it looks like you're building my kingdom, but you're really in control. You're really on the throne. So I think if it was to answer the question, what gets people unstuck from moving from default to destiny? Would be moving from, am I still in control of all of this? Or am I actually surrendering to all of this?
Great. I'm glad you just said that. In the next few moments, we're going to come back. We're going to take a short break. We're going to listen to an excerpt of your message from the men's camp right here in beautiful Hawaii. And I want to refer to that. So let's take a quick break. We'll be right back.
So here you are. You've got this vision for your life, right? And then God calls you to a church. This has nothing to do with being paid staff. This has everything to do with being a part of the house. You have a vision, you have an idea, you have a dream, and then there's the vision that God gave the leader. You don't need to suppress your vision so that this vision can live. This vision actually becomes a part of this vision. So your vision either lives within this vision or beyond this vision, but never a part of this vision. Because God's so good, he knows what's inside of you, which is why he placed you inside of this. Which brings me to another statement I ask myself all the time, or tell myself, your submission will always take you farther than your ambition. Give it up for our microphone. Your submission will always take you farther than your ambition. I remember when I was volunteering at the church that I lived in California, and I was running a young adult ministry, and I owned 2 businesses, and I refused to be on staff, and I was just serving, and I was preaching on a weekend, and I had so many ideas. I had so many ways I wanted to do it. I had so many ministry initiatives, and guess what? I'm not saying they were not the greatest ideas. They could have been, but the reality is that I'm not the senior leader, which means vision's not my job. It's actually freeing. Like, you don't have to create the vision. because God didn't put the mantle on your life. He put the mantle on your leader's life. So vision's not my job. So I would sit there and buck the system. I'd get so frustrated. And it wasn't until the last 2 years, and I had some great counselors who I realized, man, my submission's just better than my ambition. And in submission, the ministry did more, had more fruit, because you need to understand that the ability that comes with opportunity can never compete with the blessing that comes with obedience. The ability you have from an opportunity can never compare with the blessing that comes from obedience. So the question is, the moment I put myself under something in submission, I actually now have the authority to be over something.
Welcome back, everybody. That was the excerpt from Jedediah Thurner preaching at our men's camp in beautiful Hawaii. Once again, if you've just tuned into us, you can hear the beautiful sound of the waves crashing, white caps on very clear, crystal blue water.
God bless this place.
On amazing white sand beaches right now. Palm trees literally swaying above our heads. In addition to that, you can hear...
It's just so brutal what you're doing to people.
Absolutely amazing.
Basically, what Pastor Mike is saying is that if you were ever wondering, God loves us more. That's basically what.
You should be here. I think it's time that you get to Hawaii, and I think you're coming into spring, and spring's going to be totally fine. You're coming into spring, but I tell you what, don't be fooled, because summer is only 2 months and 3 months, and it's over. By then, I know you're going to have to defrost your toes, because it's going to be so cold where you are in the Pacific Northwest, the Northeast, the Midwest, and the frozen tundra of wherever you live. Enough joking around, everybody. It's good to be back. We just listened to your excerpt from your message. Great message, I might add. What a great message on submission, and a lot about God's calling as well. I wanted to ask you, although we listened to that clip, I've had somebody tell me, like, I'll do whatever you want me to do, but we're open to the Holy Spirit's leading. We're open to God's leading. How does that work together in your eyes? We're willing to do whatever you want us to do, but at the same time, we're open to God's leading and what we need to do. I understand that.
Right.
But how do you reconcile or work that out?
I think the journey for people, period, is we've not understood that church is not something you come to. It's actually something you're called to.
Mm-hmm.
It's something you're called to. And the way that God calls people to each other, to a church, to a leader, is not just to call them to it, but he actually brings them in covenant with it. You know, it's one of the words that's missing in the body of Christ completely. In fact, you would know this, that the largest churches in America, all around the world, they'll use the 3 C's. They use character, capacity, and chemistry.
Well, they would add competency, character, competency.
That's the same thing as capacity, you know. So it's character. Hey, are you going to fail morally, right? It's capacity or competency. Can you execute what we've assigned you to do? And then chemistry. Can you work with our team? Unfortunately, we're the body of Christ. So this is not just a regular Fortune 500 entity where we have to add these 2 spiritual components, because those 3 are not spiritual components. These 2 spiritual components called calling and covenant.
I would say that the 4th one would be a little bit more common. Calling.
Right.
I feel called.
Right.
But the 5th one, I've never really heard in a long time until recently, and that's covenant.
Covenant. And covenant is it's divine alignment. In the way that we've interpreted covenant, and marriage is a great example. It's not you making an agreement with someone for God. It's you making an agreement with God for someone. So me and my wife are in covenant, and regardless of what she does in this agreement, regardless of how she acts, how she responds, and she's amazing, by the way, and hot. Mm-hmm. But regardless of that, I have to honor my side of the agreement based on an agreement I made with God for her. And that's the same thing when it comes to a church. When God calls you to a church, he actually brings you into covenant with the church, which means you're making an agreement with God for that church, making an agreement with God for that leader. And regardless of how that leader responds, regardless of if you got enough FaceTime with them, a platform time, you actually have to honor your side of the agreement based on your agreement with God, not just based on your agreement with them. What's so significant about that is he's not in the business of creating covenant to break it. You know, so let's just talk about the faith-based world specifically. I talk to young guys all the time, and they'll use these words, hey, Jedediah, you know, I'm about to make a shift. And I go, really? What was it? He goes, well, it's this church. It's larger. They're paying me more. And they'll use words, it's a great opportunity. And I go, for who? God doesn't give you opportunities. He gives you a calling. Did he uncall you from the place that he had just placed you? Like you've never, and this is common language. People aren't using the word, no, God called me and God's brought me in covenant with the leader. It's just like, this is a great opportunity, which means we're making moves in ministry like we're making moves in a business. but this is a spiritual thing that God's created, and it's divine. And you can't just go, oh, this is an upgrade. Better pay, better church, better facility, better location, better city. You actually have to sit there and filter through the lens of calling and covenant. And I think it's what's missing in the body of Christ, and God's bringing covenant back to the body of Christ, because that's the vehicle and how he establishes relationships, period.
Powerful. That's very, very powerful stuff. Let me ask you, so where did you, under what context did you start to learn this?
Right.
Who would be the most impactful people in your life that this is where you began to learn?
I think
this is our last question.
Okay, great. I think for us, it was something we had to model as a ministry. You know, we're bringing, One Nation One Day is bringing unity to the body of Christ. It's just one of the many vehicles that's saying, let's do this together. And we couldn't ask the church to unite without us modeling unity. We couldn't ask the church to start creating covenant without us modeling covenant. So at our organization, there's 4 people who run it. Dominic founded it. And there's times where people get the credit, even though they didn't do it. There's times where people will say, hey, if Dominic's there, if you're not there, you know, what does that look like? And I go, I don't think you get it. We're in covenant. So if he's there, I'm there.
Yeah.
You know, if I'm speaking here because of covenant, he's speaking here.
Yeah.
And it's and so we had to pioneer it in our mind. We didn't have a lot of examples. In fact, I'll be honest, Pastor Mike, when we started journeying to covenant, we had so many great leaders say, don't do it. Don't do it. And I go, why? Well, because I went to work for this person, but I worked for their wife for 20 years. You know, I thought I was doing this, and they had all of these stories of how partnership failed them. And I remember me and Dominic looked at each other saying, there's not a lot of people thinking we should do this, but this is God's model for relationship. In fact, if you look at the Bible, without covenant, there's no reproduction. God created this mechanism that there would actually be no sex outside of marriage, let's just be honest, which means there's no children unless there's marriage, which means there's no reproductive capacity unless there's the establishment of covenant. So even in the body of Christ, there's people that are giving birth to ministries, churches, worship albums, you know, initiatives, conferences, nonprofits, but they're not establishing covenant. So they're giving birth to something in the flesh out of covenant instead of giving birth to something in the spirit, which is actually in covenant. And what I've learned is what you give birth to in the flesh, you're responsible for. But what God gives birth to in the spirit, he's responsible for. And in ministry, we don't have the luxury to carry things on our own when it demands the miraculous. But if it's birthed in the flesh, we have to care for it. We have to tend to it. We have to fill it. We have to make it.
So before we end, tell us, how can people get more of you? How can they listen to more of your teaching? How can people find you? Where would they do that?
You can go to One Nation One Day and find out all what we're doing. I'm more about, hey, here's what we're doing, less about here's what Jedediah is saying. So there's probably not a tremendous amount online right now, but if you podcast or if you YouTube me, you'll find some stuff. But I think, man, look at One Nation One Day, check out missions.me, join the movement. You know, we're in a season right now where God is doing something in and through this earth that we've never seen before. I believe we're actually in a new era in the body of Christ. We're not in a new season. God is operating in and through his people like he never has before. In fact, I believe we're standing in the best decade of ministry history since the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ and the start of the early church.
I would have
to
agree.
So don't follow a man, join a mandate.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Jedediah Thurner, everybody. Jedediah, thanks for always being here. Thanks for being so awesome. Love you. We appreciate you. Thank God for you.
Thank you for the way you're leading and loving in these islands and around the globe, and one of my favorite humans on the planet.
Thank you. All right. God bless everybody. Take care. Till next time.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Now, don't forget to hit subscribe to receive the latest episodes. And I would love for you to follow me on Instagram at Mike Kai and let me know what you got out of this week's podcast. I'll see you next week where we're helping to take your leadership from one peak to the next. Aloha.